So good evening and welcome to Industry Disruptors 2026. We are so excited to kick off this year's series with a conversation about what it takes to build, scale, and reinvent companies. As Kim said, I'm Ellen Havdala, and to date, my most exciting thing is I just joined the board of directors here, so really excited to be part of mHUB and to be here with Kristi. Tonight's conversation is about personal evolution and reinvention, what experienced founders learn over time, how they navigate uncertainty and they assess risk, and what it looks like to start over after major successes. Our guest tonight has spent more than 3 decades doing exactly that. Kristi Ross is a serial entrepreneur and an operator who has been at the center of building and transforming companies across multiple industries. Over the course of her career, Kristi has worked through more than 40 mergers, acquisitions, capital raises, and startups, giving her a rare perspective on how companies evolve from early ideas to rapid growth to pivotal moments that define their long-term trajectory. Kristi is probably best known for her role in co-founding Tasty Trade, one of Chicago's most successful fintech companies. And during her time as Tasty Trade's co-CEO, the company grew into a major force in financial media and trading education, ultimately leading to its more than $1 billion acquisition. Wow. But what makes Kristi's story particularly interesting is that this successful exit wasn't her finale. In 2022, after decades in fintech, Kristi founded U3 Coffee, a mission-driven coffee company focused on transparency, storytelling, and building deeper connections between farmers, entrepreneurs, and customers. I am very excited to be in conversation with Kristi tonight. Please welcome entrepreneur, operator, and industry disruptor, Kristi Ross.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here. Hi, Haven, back there. And thank you for the introduction earlier, and that was amazing. Thank you, Ellen. I am excited, just really quickly. I was saying this to Ellen before in the back. I'm hoping that tonight you get a 2-for-1. Because Ellen has a lot of experience that I think we are going to resonate on a number of the answers, I think, throughout the night. So
thank you for that, and I will maybe, but if there's just too much to talk about with you that I'm going to keep
I know, do we only have an hour?
Yeah, bring blankies and pillows for people. So Kristi, let's just start at the beginning. You spent decades building and scaling companies across industries, but you started your early career as an accountant. So can you talk about that and then the shift to entrepreneurship?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll try to keep this short because it just tells how old I really am, decades and decades. So right now, I have 3 wonderful girls, and I'm going to start in college. So I have 3 wonderful girls that my youngest is in college now, and the other 2 have graduated and they're out in the work world. But it sort of is like me reliving my college decisions of what path I should take, which is, what do you know when you're in college? You don't really know what that decision of, what should I major in and what do I want to do with my life? And when I was in college, I was on my own, putting myself through school, and I was like, okay, what am I good at? Okay, I'm really good at math. I'm really good at numbers, right? And I'm like, okay, let's follow that. Let's do something with that. And then I research how much can I make day one that I step out of college. And so that was public accounting was one of those things. I was like, you know what, I can do that. And then the bonus is going to be that I have a variety of companies that I'll be exposed to, right? And so I think that way, I was like, I kind of deferred the decision of what industry I wanted to go into. I was like, I'll just, I'll do what I'm good at. And so I jumped into public accounting, and a majority of the clients that I ended up working on were in the trading industry. So walking down to the trading floor, and anybody who's in my age range will know that walking down on the floor when it was open outcry, all right, the energy was infectious. And I was like, that's where I need to be. And so I kind of put a pin in that, like I am going to work towards that. I am going to make decisions towards that. And I think that that was like one of those things that helped me, I would say, find my footing, because I was exposed to a lot of other kinds of companies too. But accounting, like like that applies to every single industry. It's not like I said, I love accounting. Because that's not who I am, but I was like good at it, so that's why I chose that initially.
And that's fantastic. When I talk to operators or young entrepreneurs, even older entrepreneurs, I say you have to understand the numbers. So because that's where you can get yourself into trouble. If you trust other people, but you have to know the numbers so that you know where you always stand. So it's one thing to like say, yeah, I want to be there. It's another thing to be in a very safe industry like accounting and take a leap. So what was the impetus for the leap?
Yes. Well, one quick note on what you just said about knowing your numbers. I literally walk around, I'm like, know your narrative, know your numbers, know your industry numbers. And I try to tell that to my kids every single day, but every single CEO needs to know that. Every single CEO needs to be able to articulate all of those, like off the top of their head. But to your question, I would say that I'm a risk taker by nature, actually. So accounting wasn't my, I didn't take that path because I felt safe. It was just a logical step for me. So I think that when I look at the decisions I made, I had an opportunity when I was in public accounting, my third year, and one of my clients that I worked on had an opening for a CFO. And I was like, oh, I was 25, okay? Oh yeah, I can do that. And so I raised my hand, and luckily enough, I think they liked me, or I did a good job for them or something, and I got the interview. And, what did I know at age 24, 25? Like, not a lot. I mean, I knew, it wasn't like I was confident I was going to be the best CFO ever. It was more that I was confident I could figure it out because my work ethic, I will work hard, I will research, I will do my homework. And so that's exactly what I did. I went, this is before Amazon, okay? I went to Barnes & Noble. And I got a book that was the desktop CFO book. I was like, what do I need to know before I walk into this interview? And then because I'd be reporting to the CEO, there was another book next to that was a desktop CEO book. Like, what do I need to know to actually, help the CEO, right? That's what the CFO is supposed to do. Fantastic. And so I bought both of these books. I must have said all the right buzzwords, but I got the job. And I think the lesson, the big lesson from that is you don't get if you don't ask. You literally got to raise your hand and take a leap and take a risk. And I just sort of have that. I mean, that's who I am.
I think that's fantastic. You actually touched on something that I would like to add a little and maybe ask about. One of the things I think that distinguishes great CEOs is that they learn how to deliver their message really well. So it's not only just knowing your numbers and knowing the industry numbers, it's knowing actually what you really are about and what you deliver. And in our conversations, what I've been fascinated is that you've always known what you're about in the conversation, whether it's about Tasty Trade, or we'll get to U3 later, or you as a mom, and your message is very clear, and it's very impressive.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. So before we leave your early career, and we're going to turn real quickly to the other, you were an employee twice. What did you learn about risk assessment or other lessons, that you were able to take to Tasty Trade and then beyond?
Well, and I think one of them, which I just talked about a little bit, was literally you got to raise your hand. You don't get if you don't ask. But I think the other thing too is we're all human, okay? And while leaders are supposed to look out for their team and help them develop and they're also looking out for themselves. And I don't mean that in a negative way. So it's sort of understand that while somebody maybe it's their job to look out for you, not all managers do that. So you have to learn to advocate for yourself, and you have to make sure that you can articulate what you've accomplished, right? Fantastic. And so I think the one thing that I did, and this was at Tasty Trade, I specifically did this with people that I reviewed. I said, okay, you guys, I'm not going to sit here and tell you what you did great and what you did bad and here's your bonus and whatever. I said, you are going to come in and you're going to prepare a one-pager for me. What did you accomplish this year? What are you proud of? What did you go above and beyond? You know, tell me what you think you deserve. And so that kind of conversation, it turns it around to make people more in tuned to, wait, what does she want to hear? It's not what don't just tell me what I want to hear. Like, actually show me what you've done. I know because I'm pretty, I got a pulse on it, but having them force it into a one-pager, articulate, that whole, it's all about their numbers and their narrative, and it helps train them to start to do that in everything they do.
So as a board member, I talk to all of our managers in the companies that I sit on the boards of at least once a week, and someone always gives me a piece of really great information, at least once, and I always say to them, great, put that in an email and send it to the board, and they're like, well, I told you, and I'm like, yeah, right, but you need to learn to advocate for yourself and to show what you did. And that was fantastic. I said that literally today to somebody, and the kudos that they got back. You gotta let people understand it's okay to say how you did.
100%, 100%. And there are people too that don't. I think one other lesson too about being an employee, I also learned if I don't know something and I'm not familiar, just ask a question. Yep. Just be part of the conversation, because then all of a sudden, first of all, people will be like, oh, she's really interested. Yep. Or you become top of mind. Okay, I tell this story. I think it's funny, and not everybody always laughs, but my husband, when I met him, he asked me a ton of questions. I was like, he's really interested in me, so I married him. And then I find out he asks everybody those questions. I mean, he's just like a really inquisitive guy, right? But it really happens in business. Just ask a question if you're not sure, just so that you can participate and your voice can be heard.
That's fantastic advice. All right, let's turn to Tasty Trade. You created the company with 3 other co-founders. I mean, that's a little that's impressive. When you're not just the single voice saying, go do this, go do that. I want you to talk about how you were able to successfully create that with 3 other people and then lead as a co-CEO. Again, something I haven't really heard be successful, but you clearly mastered it. So if you could talk about how all that worked, that'd be great.
I laugh because it's not easy, and anybody who knows my co-CEO. Okay, so this one, you guys are going to have to forgive me because I'm going to try to bridge a little bit because there's a lot that happened in those years between that and starting Tasty Trade. So bear with me on the chain along the way. So one of the things that I did So let me go back to, I was the CFO of the second largest stock specialist firm on the Chicago Stock Exchange floor. And at that time, I was I was married, started to have small kids. And I'll tell you one thing that's really hard is finding that balance, right? I hate using that word, but it's true. Figuring out, how I was going to have children and actually continue to have a career. And so I decided to leave that company that I loved and people I loved, but I had to travel a lot. And so I was like, okay, travel is going to be the one piece. Maybe I give that up so I can have a consistent morning with my kids, even though I'm not home at night kind of thing, working a million hours. But I made that decision, and I went to go work for a company called Thinkorswim. Does anybody know Thinkorswim? Oh, I love that. Yay. So Thinkorswim is an options trading firm, trading technology, brokerage firm. So I went to go work for Thinkorswim as the CFO. They were early stage. They had just taken VC money. And I knew both sides, right? We knew that the VC was going to want them to build and either be bought by a public company or go public at some point or whatever. So I came in and I said, listen, I'm not going to travel. I'm just not. And second of all, I can help put your processes in place and make this company saleable, ready to go. And I said, I need 2 years, but I'm also not going to stay after 2 years if there's not enough going on. Okay, I'll tell you now. We went through 6 mergers and acquisitions in 6 years. There was literally enough going on. And then Tom Sosnoff, who was the CEO there, we then became co-CEOs at Tasty Trade. But let me still bridge that. Our last sale, our last M&A, we sold to TD Ameritrade in 2009, right after the financial crisis, okay? And we sold for $750 million. So that was really fun. But what we saw, and this will get to your question, is one of the things we saw, I'm a data person, I'm a numbers person. And in the trading world, what we saw in options, because again, it was more of an options boutique, is we saw that when we gave education, when our customers took took our classes, we saw literally the data go from, okay, wow, they traded a lot more transactional revenue, right? Brokerage firms want transactional revenue, but the key is they actually, they preserved their capital longer. But when they stopped trading, or stopped the classes, they started to decline a little bit, slowly. And at one point, they actually dipped below. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. We need them to continue education. So this was part of the impetus for Tasty Trade. So we sold Thinkorswim, and we were still on board, but jumped off to start Tasty Trade. And I got to give Tom credit because he's a wonderful, wonderful visionary. He's also crazy. I guess I'm crazy too, but in a different way. And so when we started talking about what this looks like, he wanted to make finance fun, and we wanted to make it actionable. You watch CNBC, you don't know what to do in your own portfolio, right? I mean, it's kind of like, okay, I hear what's going on, but I don't know what to do. So we created Tasty Trade to make finance fun and actionable, meaning that when you think about that analysis, we needed continuous education. So we created a media company, knew nothing about media, but we jumped in, created a media company to actually do shows, 8 hours live programming every day, talking about the financial markets, showing people like you and me how to trade live. And so that was, it was sort of jumping off, and there were actually only 3 of us co-founders doing that. We brought the 4th co-founder in later. And so I think the thing is when we started out, I mean, it was just we knew the white space. We knew what was missing. And so to be able to jump in with people that are trusted, like we knew each other's strengths and weaknesses and blind spots. And so to be able to jump in on something like that made starting a company just fun and much easier because you had a team that you knew gelled and worked really well together. The co-CEO thing, I laugh only because back at Thinkorswim, while I was the CFO, I really functioned very similarly with him as CEO, very strategic. I liked the deals. I really didn't want to do the accounting. I mean, and that's not what was exciting. It was probably the deals more than anything. And the strategic nature of it, and creating things and building things. But the co-CEO thing is hard. The thing that made it work is, and I really believe this, first of all, we butt heads all the time. We're both alphas, okay? But we did it respectfully, and we challenged each other all the time. But it's that respect, that underlying respect that we had for each other and what each other knows, that we worked very well together. And we didn't always stay in our lane, but we always came together on the important decisions and the strategy. And so I think that's why it worked, because because there was that mutual respect. He might not say the same thing, but that's what I know.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're right.
I usually
100%.
am.
Yes,
No, I'm
I
just
love
kidding.
that.
When
No.
it came to me and him.
You touched on something. As Kim mentioned, I work with the Zell Global Entrepreneurship Network, and it's basically my former boss set up 3 entrepreneur programs, one in Israel, one at the University of Michigan, and one at Kellogg. And with that, I deal with and help 60 student entrepreneurs every year. And a lot of them are like, I'm going to start this company because I'm passionate about it. And I'll tell you, I get a pit in my stomach when I hear that, because I'm passionate about knitting. I'm not going to make a career out of knitting, okay? But what you said, which to me is exactly how an entrepreneur needs to think, is you found like an area that was deficient in the world, and you found a pattern, and you went and capitalized on it, and you have passionate about that. And that to me is like what makes a fantastic company and a great entrepreneur, and frankly, a great place to work, because you're solving a real problem. And when you're not solving a real problem, you might make it, but it's a whole lot harder. So fantastic. It's one thing to start a company, and it takes a certain type of temperament. It's another thing to, work with companies that are like, growing or have grown. How did your leadership style change? How did your, co-founders' leadership, and like, how did that evolution happen? Because sometimes we almost have to change out management, because somebody that can grow a company from, 0 to 100 million is not the same one that takes it to $1 billion.
Oh my God, you are so spot on. And there are so many CEOs that don't identify that, and they let their ego get in the way, and they don't put the company first and really look at the stage that the company is at. So I think you're spot on. It is right. It takes a very different entrepreneur to start and create a company from ground zero versus somebody running a public company. like night and day skill set. But I think the important thing is one of the top reasons that startups fail is that they don't have the right team around them, right, when they start. And but the same is true as you grow. If you don't actually add the right kind of people at the right time, it can fail multiple different points along the way. And so I think the reason that it worked well for us, that we were able to kind of be in that trajectory along the whole way, is just because, for one, our experience. For two, I think that we made sure along the way that I'll say, plugged those holes where we actually had, I'll call them blind spots, but we identified the holes. We were willing to say, we know that this is a weakness that we have. And so I think that's, it's being able to identify that. Not a lot of people, not a lot of individual CEOs can necessarily do that, because they tie their whole existence around the company, right?
No, totally agree with that. Were there moments or any events where this could have gone really badly, or just where you could have messed up?
1,000,000 times over. Yes, and yes. But I think too, so there's a number of situations that I think about, like when we're talking about Tasty Trade, for example. We started with a media company, and we actually built an ecosystem because we saw opportunity. I have a life motto, by the way. It's opportunities all around you. You just have to pay attention, but you have to take action, right? And I say that so many times. That is probably one of the biggest things that has helped me over the course of my career. But but one of the things, as we continued to, as we started out with a media company, we actually started out agnostic, meaning we served multiple brokerage firms. And we had one brokerage firm, which just happened to be TD Ameritrade, come to the table and say, wait a minute, you guys, you're sending us a lot of business. We want you to be exclusive with us. And we're like, okay, do we want to do this? Do we not want to do this? We said yes. But so it was multi-million-dollar contract. So that's great. All of a sudden, like, instantly, massively profitable, making a lot of money, but it was capped every year. Even though we negotiated, right, year over year, we were capped, and we're like, do we really want to, this is not the kind of business we want to run. We don't want to be capped on what we can make. And so I think that was an inflection point, and I'll say we argued about it. Like we literally deeply discussed this, and I wanted to go transactional and go build another brokerage firm, and our CTO did. And at the time, Tom was like, do we really want to do that again? He was having a lot of fun because he was on air all day long talking about trading. It's what he wants to do, you know? And so that was an inflection point that it could have gone very, very differently.
Yeah, well, I'm glad it went well.
Me too.
Let's just take 1 minute and talk about culture. So you and I have had conversations about culture now, and it's important to both of us. The culture when you start a company and the culture when it's a billion-dollar company, it is hard to maintain that. It's hard when you're hiring a lot of employees. Can you just talk about, how you think about it, how you maintained it, and where the challenges were?
Oh, 100%. Culture is really important to me. And like you said, we've talked about this. When you start out, it's easy. You got 12 people in a room and you're all excited and everybody hears everything and everybody's on the same page, and. But as you grow, it is so vitally important to be able to articulate your vision and the why. Literally the why with everything you do, because as you grow, as your company gets bigger, if you're not explaining the why in how you think and why you're making the decisions you're making, you miss out on an opportunity to start to institutionalize the way you think. And your culture will suffer eventually because the managers that you hire, they do their own interpretation. If they're not really great communicators or don't have that same, oomph or passion or emphasis on the things that are important to you, it starts to dilute. But I think the thing is, we did a lot of company meetings. And one of the things you have to do as a CEO is constantly rally, constantly keep people excited about what you're doing and what's coming next and that they're in the know. And I think that culture is really important. The one other thing about culture that matters, and again, this is instilling in everybody who does the hiring, because initially you're interviewing everybody, right? But hiring right matters too. And the key to what we did over the course of time was hiring people that had a positive attitude that wanted to change the world. If somebody came I swear to God, if somebody came with a resume that they went to Harvard, nothing against Harvard, Harvard's awesome, but but had the attitude that, hey, everything was about them, versus somebody with a lot less, stature or whatever, or experience, but had the most amazing attitude that said, I want to change the world and I want to learn and I want to contribute, I will hire that person all day long. Because that is, the best compliment ever was somebody who posted on Facebook years ago. They're just like, I love my job because, my voice matters, because I think that building that kind of culture, but it starts with the CEO. If the CEO doesn't articulate it, doesn't tell people why they're making the decisions they're making, and doesn't communicate the vision over and over and over again, because it does, certain things shift, right?
100%.
And you need to explain why.
No, that's fantastic. So we buy companies, as you know. I insist on spending time at all of the companies that, we prospectively buy, because you can sense culture from minute one. You can see who's doing the talking. Are people afraid to talk in front of the CEO? Do you get a different vibe when the person's in the room versus when they're not? And we've walked away from a bunch of companies because, you've just felt like, ooh, this doesn't feel right. So I would say, trust your tummy. Your tummy talks to you a lot. Okay, so Tasty Tray, what a fantastic career. What a great accomplishment. You sold it. and you didn't stay in fintech. You could have hit the easy button and just like ridden out your career in fintech because you were like king of that world. It's fantastic. You turned to coffee. Let's start with the name, first of all. Where did you come up with the name?
Okay, so coming up with the name. Well, first of all, it was a little hard staying in fintech or trading because I decided to leave sooner than I was supposed to, and my non-compete kind of excluded part of that. Okay, but
It did not exclude coffee. They did not do a coffee card.
nope,
Okay.
they didn't do coffee. Coffee was allowed, but here I'll say this. Part of I spent my whole career really in a very niche business. Okay, when you start to think, okay, if you're looking at self-directed investing, because I'm just going to sort of frame this for you. Self-directed investing. If you're saying that, okay, how many people are actually really self-directed investors? And if you're going to say, okay, maybe there's 10, 15 million, right? And you say how many are, and I'm talking about the world of, is somebody that maybe like traded an option. Okay, so not even just stocks, because that number is larger. But you say that who has traded an option. So just call it 10 to 15. But you then say, okay, how many people actually are active investors? And because the trading option, maybe they traded a cover call. We're talking about like maybe 1 million or 2 million at that time that are active investors every day trading options. Look at coffee, and you're talking about literally 200 million people in the US that drink coffee every day, okay? 2.3 billion cups are consumed every day worldwide. I have always wanted to be in an industry. I wanted to test out, to understand how the other side of the world lives in the mass market, like product world, versus a niche market trading options for the self-directed investor. There are times where I thought, and actually when we first built Tasty Trade, that we thought we were building a mass market media company. We were not. Talking about options trading, like for the people like you and me. It's so trying to have a conversation about options and what we did and what we were building at a cocktail party was something that was really difficult. People's eyes would glaze over and be like, okay, I'm gonna go get another drink. And it's not that we couldn't tell the story, it's just that people didn't connect with it as much. And so even though we were trying to make it fun and actionable and approachable and more digestible and complex concepts simple, and. So coffee, I feel, how many of you drink coffee here? Okay, awesome. I love that. And that is exactly what I'm talking about, is it is a mass market partner. I can have a conversation, like a really wonderful conversation with every single one of you about coffee. And so you three, to come back to your question, but this is sort of the impetus, right? Like what's next? And I was already thinking about this, and it's multi-pronged, okay? So you three, there's an internal story about this, in that we have 3 daughters. It's uniting our family through coffee, right? And also our family bonds over coffee. We love it. I've accomplished everything I have over these years because of coffee, like early mornings, really late nights. I couldn't even tell you how much I consumed. And so the more I learned about the coffee industry, though, too, it's highly fragile, okay? And I'll talk about that in a minute, and I think we'll probably get into that a little bit. But the external, the more I learned is, wow, there's a massive disconnect on what's happening with one of the most important commodities. And it is all the way at the farm. It is highly, the sustainability is extremely fragile. The next generation does not want to take over the farms because the profits are very marginal. When you look at climate change, it's very, very real. And so when you start to talk about what's actually happening there, we don't even know that. In the US, we don't even grow coffee here. We do in Hawaii, but we don't know. We don't see the farm next door. We don't see what's happening. We don't talk about that here in the US because it's not happening right here in our backyard. The US is the #1 consumer of coffee. Okay? Remember I talked about 2.3 billion cups being consumed every day. We consume 400 million cups a day here in the US alone. That's huge, right? So anyway, so uniting the world through coffee. My initial idea and thought was connecting the farmer to the coffee entrepreneur to the end customer. So sort of these three pillars, uniting the world through coffee. And building a blockchain so that can go all the way back, tracing it back to the farmer. This is the initial idea, to get them more money, right? Because most people didn't want to pay at the, literally for more at the cup, but they could actually tip the farmer when they tip the barista. The reason we did that before we launched our cafe, that we didn't do that, is because everybody after COVID had tipping fatigue. So we created a no tipping cafe. And we said, we got to do this another way. And so there's a whole arc around why we're doing this. Internally, I have my internal reasons and the external bigger overarching reasons. In addition to that, I'm doing this with my husband. So, if it wasn't bad enough for me over 20 years.
Talk about tough co-CEOs. That's got to be tough.
Yeah, I just lived this for 20 years. I'm going to do this now with my husband, right? And we're both alphas as well. And so it's like, oh my gosh, it's like putting our marriage on the block, going, how tough are you guys? How strong is this relationship? And it was hard in the beginning, right? Finding our lanes. But right now, it is the best thing ever. But we wanted to spend the second half of our life together because we spent, 30 years getting on planes heading in opposite directions. It's like, let's lock arms and do something really incredible together. So it has been so much fun. Every day I'm having literally so much fun building what we're building. And it's building a whole ecosystem. So I think I just jumped in and added a bunch to what you actually asked me. Did I answer your question?
It was fascinating. I loved it. I mean, your story is amazing. So coffee and fintech are still pretty far apart. Were there lessons that you were able to carry over from your previous, couple of years, 30 years, and what was transferable, and what did you have to unlearn?
So first of all, everything I learned in everything I did is transferable. It literally, everything you learn, you can apply to another industry. And I feel so grateful for that. Because building a company, any decisions you're making, whether it's around people, whether it's around money, whether it's about understanding unit economics, whether it's about product market fit, all of those things apply, right? It's about finding that white space, about finding that problem. And I even, when I first approached coffee, I'm like, is there really, is all the innovation that's going to happen in coffee, is it really that complex? The more I dove into it, I was like, oh my God, the opportunity here is amazing. And the more I learned, and talking about from the beginning, what did I do in the beginning? I read books. I read the World Atlas of Coffee. That was the best. I read a bunch of books, but that one was an amazing book that I was like, oh my God, this helps me understand the industry. And then we went to Origin, we went to the farm, and it connected every single dot that I read. I was like, oh my God, I get it now. And then as we had conversations, I picked up the phone for months, literally just trying to get connected to different people in the industry and have conversations and ask them questions. So the one big difference of fintech, everybody is very siloed, right? They very protective of their, IP, of what they know, and they have to be, right? You have to protect your customers' data, and. And so very siloed industry. I get into coffee, it's like jumping into a warm bath and a big hug. I mean, everybody, it was so refreshing to just hear. Everybody was willing to like share everything they knew. I'm like, oh my God, you literally just shared your whole business model with me. And it was so refreshing and so nice to see. The one thing that is different, and you say unlearn, but the way I don't think there's anything I had to unlearn, but one thing I had to learn how to do is all of these years I had been working very closely with people with high degrees, developer degrees or finance degrees or data scientists, or I think the most difficult thing was when we opened our cafe. And me like going, oh, this is great. It's a small company, we got, 12 to 20 people extended, right? And it's like, they don't care. The people hiring the people for the cafe, it's just different. And I think that was harder for me because I'm like, wait, don't you care about this? Like, they just want to come in and do their job and go home. I mean, and nothing against them. That is something that is a way to go about your life. But I was like, I really want to try to actually expose you guys to other things and new things. And some of them highly successful, with others, it's time to say, okay, you know what, this isn't going to work. I think that was the harder thing for me because I actually felt like, aren't we hiring right? They were just nodding their head and telling us exactly what they wanted, we wanted to hear. And sometimes it wasn't even true. So that was the hardest thing for me. But we also didn't initially plan on opening a cafe. We were building the ecosystem around it. And I didn't share this, but I'm going to quickly share this. Another reason that we started U3, my middle daughter, who was an entrepreneurship major, ever since she was in middle school, she wanted to open a cafe. And her and I would go on Saturday mornings and visit all these cafes like throughout Chicago. And it was just a really, really wonderful like bonding moment. And if we would go through, and she wanted to start her own cafe. And so when she was in middle school, I bought her a domain name, and I bought her mugs with the name of her coffee shop on it, and. And then later I created, like when she was in high school, a coffee passport, where like the top 20 coffee shops. And my husband ran around the day before Christmas and picked up gift cards for each one, right? So we could put it in there, and she could make little notes, and it had little gold stars she could put on the one she liked. Anyway, and it was like this whole thing, and she was so excited about doing this. So we were like, one day she's going to open the cafe. We're going to learn everything about the coffee industry and kind of be able to feed it to her, because our kids did not want to go into financial services or trading, and they didn't want to go into like pharmaceuticals or medical. And we're like, this is the way we can actually teach them about all the business that we learned over all these years. We'll build a family company that we can kind of hand over to them, and here's all the things that we learned, and this is how we're applying it to this business. But anyway, so they're actually, none of them went into trading, none of them went into finance, and my entrepreneur who just graduated literally last year, she went into finance.
Oh, that's funny. That's awesome. So the title of this series is Industry Disruptors. Mm-hmm. How is U3 disrupting the coffee industry?
Yes. So one of the things that I took from Tasty Trade and how we approached coffee is a little different. When we started to look at different components along the value chain, we said, okay, we're going to come in, and first of all, it was wonderful to be welcomed as warmly as we were. It's like we also want to give back. And so part of our mission is mission-driven to help enable the farmers and actually the coffee entrepreneurs as well. We created a coffee exchange where we highly curate coffees. It's like walking into the Trader Joe's where everything is highly curated. You don't walk into the Jewel and have 30 different ketchups you have to select from. It's more like walking into Trader Joe's where they've done the curating for you. And so that concept, I think, is really powerful. There are other wonderful sites that have literally hundreds and hundreds of coffee where I get overwhelmed. I'm like, what am I supposed, what am I going to do? And they try to curate it, but there's so many other aspects of coffee that when you're going through it, you really need the education piece. So our media arm is not only about elevating some of these other people and other roasters and other people in the value chain through our media. I did actually the interviews of them to tell their story, to help them get their story out there, but also the education component. And so adding in the education component, not only online, but also in person. And so there's that aspect of kind of like if you looked at the Tasty Trade model, it's like, oh yeah, the education and the media and doing like literally the exchange. We built a futures exchange at Tasty Trade, and here we're just building, it's not a futures exchange, but it is an exchange in a different way where we're highlighting and helping others within the industry as well as the customer by highly curating. Does that answer your question?
That's awesome. What's hard to believe is that our time is up. I know.
Oh my God.
Yes, so we're on to Q&A. I have questions. I got backup questions, another like 30 of them, in case these guys don't have any. But I thought it was only fair for you all to be able to ask Kristi questions, because I'm sure you have some. So are there any questions? Oh, yeah, see, my job's done.
Yeah, you talked about leadership and CEOs, and as the evolution goes, startup, then scaling, and that leader a lot of times isn't the one great at starting up, but not scaling.
Yes.
So I call it not being the smartest person in the room. Mm-hmm. How do you go about teaching, or say a future CEO or so forth, that it's okay not to be the smartest, but it's how you collaborate with your team.
I totally agree. I'm gonna share a quick story. I'll try to be quick. I know I'm not always quick. But when Tom and I back at Thinkorswim, when I was the CFO and Tom was the CEO, I gave him this book. He still was mad at me for this. It was called the Five Temptations of a CEO. And so it had come out right around the time that Thinkorswim was started. And it's exactly about this issue. Like at what point, what inflection point, right, is the CEO kind of identified as maybe not the right CEO, having that CEO themselves say, maybe I'm not ready. And they're literally like these 5 temptations. And if I can remember them off the top of my head, because this was back in like early 2000s. But it was a CEO needs to be able to address conflict, like constructive conflict. They need to make sure their managers are accountable. They need to check their ego at the door, right? They need to be able to do that. They need to be able to be vulnerable, like you're talking about. Like once they learn, they don't have to be the smartest person in the room, right? And they allow themselves to be vulnerable. And then I think the fifth one was decisiveness. And they need to learn how to make quick decisions. So it's sort of like that aspect. You can apply that, at these different stages. And a lot of like early CEOs, when you start and you have to scale, you actually get in your own way, right? These CEOs get in their own way, and they're trying to identify the problem why something's not working. I'm telling you right now, a lot of times it's because of the CEO, and it's hard for them to realize that. But it's having open dialogue and open conversations with them. And yeah, like as a board member, I see this, and I'm sure you see this too. It's hard for them because again, they wrap their identity into it, and sometimes you have to remove the CEO. But the more communication, the more conversations you have with them, the better. I do have one other example of that. We acquired a company early on in Tasty Trade, and it was a production company we were using, and we decided we need them in-house, right? So we brought them in-house, and over time, as we grew, the one that was the CEO of that company, he ended up being the bottleneck. Everybody loved him. I loved him. So I had to sit down with him and say, you know what? You're a bottleneck, and why? Like, have a very good conversation with him. And so I removed him from that position with his blessing. Takes a special kind of person to hear it, right, and understand it. And I offered, when we looked at his skill set, I offered him up a job to be QA, head up QA. So, and because he's really detailed and really, like very particular, and he did a great job at that. And put him in there, he thanked me 10 times over. It was like this, first of all, the stress was like relieved, he was relieved, but also he removed that bottleneck and we were able to move much faster. So sometimes the CEO, 100%, is the problem, but you gotta have those conversations with them. Does that answer your question?
I gotta tell you, that is a real art form. To be able to take someone out of their job, put them in a wholly different job that may not be quite as prestigious, and make them feel valued and make them want to stay. I applaud you, because that's a real skill set. So congratulations on that one.
Thank you.
That had to be a bad couple weeks.
It was hard, but you know what? It was conversation together and helping him through that.
Good on
I
you.
think more than anything, and being cognizant of it. I mean, he's human, Everybody has an ego, whether they say it openly or not. And so it's about handling that and making sure that it's done, very gingerly.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. There were a bunch of hands, so.
Hi, Kristi. I'm curious, what drove the decision to have two CEOs in Tasty Trade? Like, were there like specific characteristics of the company that require two different skill sets, or what happened?
That's a really great question. Back at Think or Swim, like I was just talking about giving this book to Tom, he was totally insulted. He's like, what are you saying? I shouldn't be the CEO? I said, no, but you know what? Some of these things, like, you just need to be cognizant of, right? And so I could have that dialogue with him. Like, I am a person that doesn't mind conflict. I actually enjoy it. Not as long as it's constructive, right? Like, because you learn something every time you go through that. He hates conflict. Like, there are certain things where we had just sort of this different approach to things, and I think he realized day to day he didn't want to really do a lot of the things that CEOs needed to do, but I also understood, like, he didn't want to not have a CEO title. So it's like, listen, we'll be co-CEOs, we'll do it together, we'll make it work. And so it was more of a conversation between us that really had to happen. Like, I wasn't coming in there like, I have to be CEO. It's just like, fine, let's do it together. It's important to you, great. But I need to be able to help move this company forward, and I need to be able to do that as CEO as well. So we agreed to sort of lock arms and butt heads and make it happen.
So there was a question here, if you could get the mic over here, great. This gentleman in the second row, yeah.
Hi, thanks to both of you guys for putting on this event. My question is related to coffee. As a consumer, you talked about how these farmers, and to go even a step further, there's co-ops, right? They're run by co-ops, from what I understand. I got to see a documentary about coffee, and I was blown away. It's called Black Gold, by the way. I'm not trying to plug it. I'm just saying I got to learn about something that I drink coffee every day, but I had no idea about. For instance, you have these farmers making piddly amounts of money, right? All the way from that portion to your end. Let's say, like, I get my coffee from Starbucks, and the price that I pay for it versus what they receive and what the markup is and what kind of huge profits there are in coffee, I was blown away, And mind you, this documentary, so for instance, they might make $1. I'm just using an example. They might make X. And then by the time I pay for it, it was by that time, it was like actually when I saw the documentary, $3.74 for a grande at Starbucks.
So is your question how that differential happens, or what's your
No,
question?
my question specifically is, now fast forward, the price of coffee has gone up astronomically in the last 3 years. What do you see as like the inflection point about the price of coffee? You know, right now that coffee costs $6. Are people going to start paying for coffee at $9 an hour? I mean $9. I'm just curious to know what you think about how to differentiate your coffee, or how do we know what the price of coffee is and the value? I'm just trying to, maybe that's not a question, but if there's any sort of correlation you could put to that.
First of all, I think that's actually an excellent focus, and you're exactly right. The farmer makes very little, and I think that this is part of exactly our mission of trying to educate, literally trying to educate that arc, right? Like trying to educate the end consumer of what goes into a cup of coffee. And so that is part of the problem. You just identified part of what we identified over the course of all the research we did and everything we looked into, so you're spot on. And at the end of the day, I'm addicted to coffee, personally, so will I pay $9? I will. I mean, but that's part of the price. Some people may not. They'll look for alternatives, and you see alternatives all over the place now. Mushroom coffee, right? I mean, you see a number of companies trying to change that up and provide alternatives for this. So it's happening, but I personally don't believe that coffee is going to go away because it's just priced out of the market. There are ways, all the way back to the farm, that things can be done. And that's part of actually what, I know I didn't even talk about this, but we have what's called our U3 Coffee Bank, which is our mission to literally help not only the community we're in, but also all the way back to the farmers. And it's about helping them build infrastructure that literally helps them make more money at the end of the day, right? And so we can't control the C market, right? We can't control what happens in, the financial markets, right? The coffee futures, but there are other things we can do all the way back to the farm to help them. So does that answer your question? Yeah.
Well, we're out of time. Breaks my heart because I'm loving this conversation. I love learning from you. Is there one last message you want to leave the crowd with? Just inspirational or?
Yes. Well, I'll go back to my one of my many life mottos of literally opportunity is all around you. Pay attention and grab it. It is action. I used to think people with the ideas were oh, you're the greatest. It's the people that take action, okay? It's the people that move things forward that make a difference in this world. So of the 1,000 CEOs and founders that I've interviewed on our show, Bootstrapping in America, which I interviewed Haven, it literally, one of the questions that I would ask at the end is what's one piece of advice that you would give to someone who wanted to start a company? And I promise you, a majority of the time, the answer was just do it. I literally, and you know this because we were on a Zoom call, I literally have the words, just do it, in my office, and it's on the wall. And it is, I know Nike would not appreciate that, but I'm telling you, just do it. Dive in, just do it. You will figure it out. So that's what I will leave you with. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.